Israel, the end times, and the Antichrist. The more I study Bible prophecy, the more I realize I don't know as much as I thought I knew. This video will be discussing how Israel, the physical location, and people who live there play a bigger part in Bible prophecy than I once previously thought. The true Jew and the true Israel are now those who believe and follow Jesus Christ as the Messiah. The same is true for those who followed God before Jesus came, who were true to the Lord, just like Jesus said to the Pharisees who didn't believe him to be the Christ in John chapter 5, 45 through 47 about Moses. Do not think that I will accuse you before the Father. Your accuser is Moses, in whom you have put your trust. If you had believed Moses, you would believe me, because he wrote about me. But since you do not believe what he wrote, how will you believe what I say? As we know through reading the Old Testament, God had a personal relationship with the Hebrew people since the beginning of time, and I believe now, the more I study Bible prophecy, that much of it is actually directed towards them. First, I'll point out that I'm 99% sure the Antichrist will be a Jewish person. The Jewish people today, most of them do not believe Jesus is the Messiah. They're still expecting a Messiah, a Christ. So the Antichrist will come being opposite of Jesus in all things, really, in an attempt to fulfill the Jewish people's messianic expectations of the coming Messiah. Jesus even said, when declaring himself to be the Christ, that I have come and you did not accept me, but another will come and him you will receive. That's John chapter 5, verse 43. Another verse that references the Antichrist that shows him to be Jewish is Daniel 9:27, which says, he will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. And at the temple, he will set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. This verse shows that the Antichrist will have a say over what happens according to Jewish customs, since he puts a stop to the sacrifices and offerings. This also will take place within the third temple, which is within Israel, which points to this being another sign in my eyes that this refers to the Antichrist being Jewish. Now, referring to Israel and how much of the prophecy is directed towards that part of the world, as I mentioned in Daniel 9, those verses point to the temple and sacrifices, which would be in Israel. Also, we have the prophecy in Jeremiah 30, verse 7, that says, alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. This prophecy is known as Jacob's trouble, which closely resembles the predictions about the end in Matthew 24, discussing the Great Tribulation, and 1 Thessalonians 5:3, discussing the same. Matthew 24 always had a verse that made me think twice, which is verse 16, but I'll read verse 15 and 16, which says, therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. It always made me think, let those in Judea flee to the mountains, verse 16, because I live 7,000 miles away from Judea. So it seems almost like Matthew 24 is a chapter directed towards those who are in Israel. Luke 21, which is a parallel chapter to Matthew 24 and referring to the same Great Tribulation events mentioned in Matthew 24, and this narrows it down even more precisely to these end times events referring to Israel and the people living there. This is Luke 21, verse 20 through 24. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation is near. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let those who are in the midst of her depart, and let not those who are in the country enter her. For these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days, for there will be great distress in the land and wrath upon this people. And they will fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem will be trampled by Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. After reading these verses, it's pretty hard to not come to the conclusion that these events mentioned in Luke 21 and Matthew 24 are referring to a great tribulation that seem to be directed towards the Jewish people living in the land of Israel. God has had personal dealings with those people since the beginning of creation, and many times they've turned their hearts from his truth, the most important one being that Jesus Christ is the Messiah and the Christ. Jesus even said in Luke 13:34 how he longs for them to see this truth, but many of them haven't. That verse reads, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, but you were not willing. I'm sure that there's even more proofs of this within the book of Revelation, such as the end times battle that takes place in Israel, Revelation 16:16, which reads, And they gathered them together to the place which in Hebrew is called Har-Mageddon. And I'm sure there's also many other verses and concepts related to this, so feel free to comment them below. These things that take place will have worldwide ramifications, as we know in Revelation that all the kings of the earth will gather together for that battle. But the more I learn about this, it seems that these end times events that will take place are directed at the Jewish people and around the land of Israel because of them not accepting Jesus Christ as the Messiah. It's one final judgment, just like the ones that happened all throughout the Old Testament because of their unbelief. But this will be the final one, and the hope is that as clear prophecy is unfolding, that many Jewish people and people all throughout the world will see the signs going on and will have their eyes and hearts opened until the ultimate truth that Jesus Christ is the Messiah and that he is the only way to eternal salvation in paradise with God. This is what we should contend for, as many people getting saved as possible. As God told us, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. So pray, that's Matthew 9:37 and 38. So pray for this and also take action. What a great honor it will be to be a laborer in the Lord's harvest. That's an eternal achievement. Thanks for watching. God bless.